Hello and welcome to the Financial Literacy Debate Training Session number 2. If you haven't watched the video for the first training session, you should watch that first. Today we'll go over two main things. First, the differences between 2-year and 4-year colleges. Then, we'll go over the format and structure of this debate tournament. Before we go over new material though, I'd like to take a moment to review some things that you've already learned. Review question number 1. What does your credit score determine? If you need a moment to look at your notes, feel free to do so, even if you need to pause the video to give yourself a little bit more time. I'll be moving on to the answer immediately though. So what does your credit score determine? It impacts the interest rates that you'll get on mortgages, loans, and your credit cards. And as we learned last time, interest rates really add up over time, and it's the cost that you pay for taking out this borrowed money. Okay, moving on to question number 2. What is the difference between disposable income and discretionary income? This is something gone over in the key terms video created by Noddle. If you haven't had a chance to watch that video, it's also linked in the description below. Check your notes if you need to, but I'll be moving on to the answer immediately. So what is the difference between disposable income and discretionary income? Disposable income is money after taxes, and whereas discretionary income is money after paying necessary expenses. So the money that you get in your paycheck after taxes are deducted is your disposable income, but after you pay your bills and things like that, the money left over is your discretionary income. Okay? Third question. What is the benefit of a subsidized loan versus an unsubsidized loan? I'll give you a moment to check your notes if you need to. I'll be moving on to the answer now. For a subsidized loan, the federal government pays the interest while you're in school and during a 6-month grace period after you leave. But for an unsubsidized loan, the interest begins to accrue immediately. Subsidized loans are needs-based, which means you need to prove that you need the money, whereas unsubsidized loans are not needs-based. All right, with that, let's jump into the first new concept that I want to talk about today. That is your earning potential. Your earning potential is defined as the amount of money a person should be able to earn given their credentials and professional capacity. Your earning potential is defined by 3 major things. First, your marketable skills. As your skills become more technical and desired exiting college, this increases your earning potential. Second, you also want to consider prestige credentials. We'll talk about this more in a moment. And third is your access to information and influence. Earning potential is not just tied to your marketable skills though, or your area of study. It's significantly impacted by the other 2 things, the prestige of the institutions you attend and your access to the network and influence that you gain while there. Let's talk a little bit deeper about prestige credentials. All right, let's take a moment to look at this chart. This chart looks at the difference in income based on major, but also based on schools. In the rows are skills that you would get from going to college, whereas the columns are the degree of selectivity and the perceived value of the college that you went to. The difference in earning potential based on career is about 67% at the most selective colleges. If you choose the same career at a different college, the difference is also about 69%, so not much of a difference there. Interestingly enough though, if you have the same major, the difference between the most selective college and the least selective college is also 65%. That means if you choose the same career but at a different college, you have 65% less earning potential. This is the same with the other careers as well. As you can see here, with education, it's also a difference of about 65%. This is based on the average earning once you're in your 2nd year. How do you think this impacts choosing between going to a 2-year or going to a 4-year? When you leave a highly selective 4-year, you're automatically raising your earning potential. So keep that in mind as you're putting together your cases. The next factor that I want to discuss in your earning potential is your access to information and influence. While you're in college, you're networking, and that networking has the potential to significantly affect your earning potential. It does this both in direct and indirect ways. First, through knowledge. Networking allows you to become connected with professionals in your field or with students who are also going into similar fields. So whether you're taking their classes or are looking for internships, being able to talk to these people and work with them will definitely increase your earning potential down the line. Second, you're also able to get advice. Reaping the advice that peers and mentors have for you is essential, so make sure you listen to everything they have to say. Oftentimes, advice is one of those immeasurable impacts on your earning potential. There are some things that are kind of unspoken in college, and being able to get advice from the specific people in the fields that you're trying to get more acquainted with will definitely help you along your path and in your career. Third is referrals. Referrals from networking can give you an upper hand when applying for jobs and allow for employers to see the potential in you. A referral can also help with highlighting your skills and can help take you to the next level when it's done right. This is even more true at a 4-year university. Influential contacts tend to be at a 4-year institution and more prestigious institutions. So the more time that you spend in these environments, the better chance you have of getting these things. Similar to referrals, you have job opportunities. Along with receiving a referral letter, networking can be important in getting you a direct connection to a job in the future. You see this a lot with prestigious universities in particular, where if you're an alumni of, say, an Ivy League, that says a lot about whether or not you're a desirable candidate. The next idea you want to consider while preparing your cases is called transfer loss. More than 81% of community college students indicated that they wanted to earn a bachelor's degree. This means that the majority of students entering a community college self-reported that eventually they wanted to transfer to a 4-year. Of these students, though, only about 33% of them actually made it and transferred to a 4-year within 6 years. There's a diversity of reasons why these students didn't end up transferring to a 4-year ultimately. The research doesn't point to any singular reason. That being said, you should consider this when you're preparing your 2-year and 4-year cases. Whether you're on the 4-year side and arguing against this, or you're arguing the 2-year side and need to defend these statistics. If you are one of those students that does end up transferring to a 4-year, there are other problems that you end up facing as a transfer student. Transfer students lost an average of 27 credits each, almost an entire academic year's worth of class credit, because they weren't equivalent to the 4-year university's credits. One quick note, these credits that they're talking about are similar to the units that you earn in high school. This is not the credits like your credit score. Also, nearly 40% of students received no transfer credit at all, and this resulted in the loss of time and money. So even if you do end up transferring, a lot of the time you end up taking longer than the 2 years on top of the 2 years that you expected. Again, you want to consider all of these things when preparing your cases. Additionally, one of the struggles of going to a 2-year first is, depending on the school you're at, sometimes the instructional quality is not on par with what you would receive at a 4-year. Ultimately, you end up spending money on courses that aren't as good quality and that don't help you after you transfer. While you're preparing, you're going to need to consider both sides of this argument. While these statistics are worrisome, they're not the whole story. Okay, now, before we go on to our next section, I want you to do a self-guided exercise. I want you to make a chart like this one in your notes. During the last session, we came up with pros for both sides. But now, let's consider some of the refutations that the other side of the debate might make against your case. Take a few minutes to come up with ideas to fill out both sides of this chart. Ultimately, you should remember that this is a debate between two cases, and there's advantages and disadvantages on both sides. On my chart, I have 4 rows, but I encourage you to come up with as many contentions for the pro or con side that you can come up with. I suggest working with your teams to come up with a diversity of ideas. These will become the basis of the rebuttal speeches that you and your partner write. For this tournament, you will need to prepare answers, rebuttals, and think about the potential responses of your opponents to the cases you're already writing. You should cross-pollinate ideas and work out the potential debates. Neither side is perfect, and that's why it's debatable. So take the time now to think through the pros and cons of both sides. At this point, you and your partner should be able to know which sides of the debate that you'll be writing, whether it's the 2-year case or the 4-year case. You should focus on your assigned case and brainstorm as many advantages and disadvantages as possible. In a moment, we're going to shift gears, so if you're still working on this, you should pause the video now and come back when you're done. If you're done though, the next thing that I want to talk about is the structure and the audience of these debates. These debates are going to be a bit different from what you're used to with policy debates. This goes for the audience and also the metric by which winner and losers are determined. For the rest of this seminar, I'm going to use our time to highlight how exactly your debates are going to be decided. The first important thing you want to consider is your audience and approach. This is going to be different from your normal policy debate format. I'll highlight some of the differences now. First, these debates are going to focus on personal decisions rather than policy options. That means that the impacts that you make and the stories that you tell in your rounds should be individual, not a national or global scenario. Also, there will be an emphasis on your analysis and persuasiveness. Winners of these debates are not just the people who made the best arguments, but the way you present those arguments matters too. In a moment, we'll break down the ballot and the very specific metrics that you'll be evaluated on. Clash in these debates are only on case with no surprises. The reason that we're having you all turn in your cases ahead of time is because you will be able to see your opponent's cases to prepare. Everything that you use in the round needs to be disclosed ahead of time. No surprises. Finally, analysis should be logical and connect to connections with a personal financial benefit. As we've emphasized before, the thing that you're trying to determine most is the greatest financial decision. So all of your impacts should be about the financial impact on an individual. Even if you have other things that you want to talk about, it always needs to tie back to the financial implication. Even if you have other things you want to talk about, you should always make sure that it ties back to the financial implication of the decision to choose a 2-year or 4-year college. This also means that there's no external disadvantages. All of the arguments you make should be directly supporting your case or directly responding to points your opponent has made. There are no disads, there are no counterplans, there are no critiques. Okay, I'm sure you understand that, so let's move on to the debate structure. This is how the speeches will break down. This will be a 2 versus 2 debate style, and there are 6 speeches with 2 cross-examination periods. For this format, cross-examination counts as a speech, so tag team will not be permitted. Opening statements are 6 minutes long, cross-examination is 3 minutes, rebuttals are 5 minutes, and closing speeches are 4 minutes. Your case speeches should only establish your case, whereas rebuttal speeches will be your chance to respond to your opponent's case and extend your case. Closing statements should summarize your final points for both your case and your rebuttals. To clarify, there is no affirmative or negative in this debate. There are simply 2 competing cases. The reason this matters is because if you are presenting the 4-year case, your first speech is only establishing reasons why the 4-year is preferable. The first 4-year speech is not there to respond to the 2-year case yet. You shouldn't respond to your opponent's arguments directly until the rebuttal speeches in this format. The first speaker on each side will give the opening speech and the closing speech. The second speaker from each side will ask questions during the cross-examination period and deliver the rebuttal speeches. While the first speakers will be able to answer questions, they will not have their own cross-examination period to ask questions. The total time for these debates will be shorter than a policy round. On the day of the tournament, you will debate for 4 or 5 rounds, and you will have at least 2 debates on each side of the topic. All right, with that, let's talk a bit about the rubric and how you'll be evaluated. Here's what the judge's ballot looks like. You should also have this in the student guide. As we're going over this ballot, I want to highlight the fact that your understanding of financial concepts are emphasized and that Speaker 1 and Speaker 2 have differences in their rubric. Judges will be instructed to use the full range of this possible score, with the middle representing an average performance. Therefore, you may receive anything from a 1 to 10 on these particular categories. A 5 would be an average score, 0 would mean you were unable to complete the basic goals of that speech, and 10 would be you gave a perfect speech. 10s will be very rare. Speaker 1 will be evaluated on their case speech and their closing summary. Speaker 2 will be evaluated based on your rebuttal speech and your cross-examination questions. This next part is very important for you to take note on. The winner of the team is the team that scores the most points based on this ballot. I'm going to repeat that. The winner of the round is the team that scores the most points based on this ballot. This means that every speech, including cross-examination, goes towards your final score. That also means that your speaking style and performance is a significant portion of determining who wins and loses the debate. This is not, and I repeat for emphasis, this is not a policy debate round. This means you should avoid using jargon or any specific debate terminology. You should, however, emphasize your understanding of financial concepts and terminology. Leaning on your traditional policy debate skills, like your speed or vernacular, are only going to hurt your overall score here. So you need to make sure that you're approachable and understandable for a general audience. Your judges are going to have different backgrounds. Some of them will be financial people. Some of them will be our usual volunteer judges. If you want to read a bit deeper about the instructions the judges will get about how to evaluate the round, the instructions for judges will also be in the Google Drive where you're submitting your speeches at finlit.landl.org. Reading that packet might give you a better idea of what exactly the judges are looking for. Judges who are filling out their ballot will consider these questions. Which team showed more command of the financial concepts being debated? Which team had a better constructed, more persuasively argued position throughout the debate? Which team did a better job of analyzing the evidence to make conclusions about factual claims? Which teams used cross-examination better to support and develop their arguments? Which team did a better job of summarizing the issues at stake and presenting a conclusive financial case? Every speech in this debate matters, including cross-examination, and the winner is determined by the total points on the rubric on the ballot, not simply who did a better job in the last couple speeches. Okay, now that you know how the debates will be evaluated, I want to take some time to give you some instructions on how you should be outlining and structuring your case. Here's a skeleton for what a general case structure should follow. Whether it's the 2-year case or the 4-year case that you're writing, each case you write should have 2 contentions, and each contention should have 2 or more arguments that support that contention. Each argument should have at least 1 piece of evidence from the packet or that you did from your own research to support it. If you do your own research, you need to disclose that along with your case. Another important distinction between this format and policy debate is that you should not be reading cards. Rather, you should write your cases more in line with what would be an essay. To cite your evidence, you should do it like you do when you're writing a paper, by paraphrasing or quoting a line at most. The majority of your case should be written in your own words. I repeat, you should not be reading cards in this format. You should use the format as evidence, but ultimately, your cases should be your own words. If you read whole pieces of evidence like you would a card in this format, it's going to hurt your score dramatically. It's not only going to hurt your style points, but it will also hurt your judge's perception of you and your understanding of the financial concepts. Your best bet is to write your own case in your own words. You should use the evidence, but only so much that it helps back up the points that you're writing and not the other way around. This is why I've been saying that there's enough evidence in the packet alone to be able to write your case. It's because most of your case is going to be your own writing and not citations from the evidence. Please work with your teams and coaches to write your cases and do this figured out. Collaboration will only make you stronger. If you have any questions, feel free to message us on the Lambda Discord. We created a special channel for financial literacy. Okay, that just about wraps up the second session. So let's look at what you've got coming up between now and the tournament. Here's a reminder of our schedule. This is the second financial education seminar. The next thing that we'll be checking for is your first drafts of your case on January 26th. Those should be uploaded in the Google Drive folder located at finlit.lambda.org. After that, we'll have the third and final seminar. We'll take some time to review your cases and workshop them with you all as teams and individually. All cases and rebuttals will be due on January 30th. This is the weekend before the tournament. In the week leading up to the tournament, we'll host some practice rounds online, either within your team or between schools. This will be to make sure that your cases are in their best shape and ready to see the light of day. On February 6th, we will have our tournament. Because this is a one-day tournament, expect to be debating for most of the day. This means you'll have debates before and after lunch, regardless of if you make it to elimination rounds. The top two teams from the tournament will advance to a final round on February 11th. Okay, so let's take a moment to look at the things that you should be doing between now and when your cases are due. First, you should finalize your main contentions for your cases. Second, you should complete the drafts of these cases with evidence and save them in the shared folder. You can access the shared folder at finlit.lambda.org. You'll need to request permission to access that folder when you go to that link, so go to it sooner rather than later. When you're uploading the document, make sure that you follow this naming convention. It should go school, whether or not it's a 2-year or 4-year case, and your names. This will help us know who's turned in which cases. This is very important because we need to be able to see your speeches before the actual tournament. It's a requirement for competing. Once you've written your cases, the next thing you have to do is start writing your rebuttals and responses. All right. With that, that's the end of the second training seminar. I hope you found it helpful. If you still have any questions after watching this video, again, we're always going to be available on the Discord. That's it. Thank you. Have a good night.